It's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I am a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you'd like to support this channel, get additional bonus live streams twice a month, be able to read my comic books for free online, to see more work in progress, deep into my creative process, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a member. We have a Discord server where we share artwork and discuss art and process and all that and more. It's patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook, get work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, receive blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's fueling my creative engine, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you would like to purchase physical copies of my comic books free digitally on Kindle or Comixology, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. That'll forward you to my Amazon author page, where you can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. It's a self-contained, done in one graphic novel. Or you can pick up my most recent project, Morningstar, which tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. Morningstar is an 8-issue series. This book, Volume 1, contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains issues 5 through 8. Both volumes contain extensive back matter. There are character sketches, page layouts, thumbnails, script excerpts, basically showing you how I put the book together. All of that and more at amazon.jeremy.net. And speaking of patrons, I have to give a big shout out to Jay King, new Patreon subscriber, longtime viewer, joined in at the $20 tier. Thank you so much, Jay King, for hopping in there. I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate your support. Appreciate you being a watcher, enjoying this, and I appreciate having you on board on the Patreon. So thank you. And also some more shout outs to give. I had the pleasure of hanging out last night with the Artcasters and having my first in-person art hangout in a long time. Hanging out with Joshua Kimball, Scott Circlin, Corey Kerr, also frequent Artcaster guests, Jim Lujan and Ken Mora. It was great to hang out, talk comics, shops, just sketch and just BS, joke around. It was an incredibly great time, and it's something that's been sorely missing in my life. It was nice to hang out, see them again. And also, Joshua gave me an advance copy of a book that is not out yet, but coming out in June, is Jacob's Apartment. It's another book. He, writer, artist, colorer. I actually asked him, who's your colorist? He's like, I colored it myself. This is a beautiful looking book, and I'll be writing a more detailed review of it once I have a chance to finish it first for my patrons and then for my newsletter subscribers to give you guys an idea of what this book's all about. But Josh, thank you so much. I am looking forward to this, and I'll definitely mention it again as it gets close to the release date so you guys can check it out for yourselves. So where are we at today? What am I up to? So let me see, where's the screen here? All right, so the Medusa pieces. I do plan to come back to the other sketches the other compositions that I came up with. The one that Martin suggested last week. But right now, I'm just doing some color variations. And I had the idea of putting candles in the foreground for this piece. But I felt like I wanted to have it where it very distinctly had warm lighting and then cool lighting for the shadows, the edges that were facing away from the candles. But it doesn't feel. It feels a little bit off in comparison to where I'm just doing it fully warm and fully cool. I think I might try coming in here with some grays to cool off a little bit of the shadow side. But I've even changed the way the lighting is on this one. If you look at this cool one without the candles, I've changed it so that the lighting is coming from the upper left as if it's a kind of a moon roof. Let's see, 47, this is in the chat. How you doing, man? Thanks for showing up. He says, look at all those tasty colors. Yeah, I'm enjoying this. This process. I still look at this as an extension of my thumbnailing process, and thumbnailing is my favorite thing to do. So I'm just enjoying this. But I changed it so that in the cool one, the lighting is coming from above left, like kind of a sort of like a moon roof. Whereas the one here that's warm, I haven't put candles in the foreground yet, but I've got it where all the lighting is coming from the front. So now I'm just kind of coming in here and I'm trying to figure out how cool I want to go with the cool side. Because, like I said, the shift from fully warm to like cool blue seems like it's too abrupt. So maybe just going to a gray. Because, the whole thing is that if you've got a warm color, cooling it off doesn't necessarily mean going to a blues or greens or purples. It can just be, if it's orange, then going to red, because red is cooler than orange. So you can still get that sense of something cooling off, or going to gray. It could be, if you're really going to a cool thing, then you're kind of going across the color wheel. Point being is that a gray, like a neutral gray, will feel warm if you have it surrounded by cool colors, and it will feel cool if it's surrounded by warm color. I mean, cool if it's surrounded by warm colors, warm if surrounded by cool colors. So that is another trick that, for somebody who is definitely not a master of color, that's something that I've been trying to be aware of and use more often. And even though this yellow I'm putting in here is a more saturated yellow, he's a marble statue, and I still want him to feel, whitish, but white definitely reads as hot. Like if you're looking right at the source, like a candle's flame, or looking at the sun, even though the sun gives off warm light, outdoors it almost feels white. So if I'm going to cool off this, he's got kind of a cream color based on it being sort of a white marble. Then going to sort of a more saturated yellow is still cooling him off. But this is one of those things where I'm going to just play with it and see how it feels. I'm not trying to get it exactly what would this look like if I were to build a maquette in real life and make it realistic colors. It's more of just I'm trying to go for what feels like the story that I'm trying to tell. And 47 is also says it's a lot like having a strong focal point, using colors to motivate where to pay attention. Yeah, that was also something that I was thinking about. What I like in the top one is having everything kind of in the same palette, but then specifically having the marble statue the only thing that has a very light tone in it, so it would jump out just by virtue of contrasting with everything else. And I am tempted to do an alternate version of these two where I do the reverse, where everything is in neutral, and then the Gorgon is the figure that stands out. And I'm tempted to do that variation really just as an experiment. That's kind of my thumbnailing process, is instead of trying to predict what the right answer is, I just try to sketch out all the different options, then just look at them and say, all right, what feels right to me? Because if it feels right, one of my instructors once told me long ago, if it feels right, then it is right. Trying to do things where you're making a piece exactly what it should be sometimes kills the magic. And as long as I'm doing it this way, let's try. One of the things I did was kind of playing with the key where I've got playing with the value and taking the shield, which is in the background. Oh wait, I am using a brush that I did not intend to use. Switch back to my studio pen. Although actually, now that I think of it, there's this brush that I found. It's called the IGB inker, Janssen inker. I presume it's named after Klaus Janson. I was doing some sketches with it, and I'm like, this feels like kind of a Klaus Janson-y line art. Let's see here. Hey, Salazar Art Nation in the chat. Says how? Hey, Jeremy, how was the drink and draw with the Artcasters yesterday? I was talking about it at the start of the show. It was fantastic. It was like being on an episode in person. You know, we're just hanging out, sketching, goofing around, lots of joking, lots of wasn't even lots of busting of balls. It was just the weird, quirky humor that everyone has. That mix of the crowd. It was really really fun. I enjoyed myself thoroughly. I'm glad that the guys invited me to join in and participate. We were out later than I have been in a long time, so it was good times, very good times. And thanks for asking. Let's see here. And I see Vega is in the chat. Says color comp. Yes, very much so. So I drew out a thumbnail for a piece I want to do, and it's a Medusa. I call it Medusa's lover. So the whole point is that she's got a guy kind of spooning her, curled up with her, except the guy is turned to stone. And now I'm just working out color variations, trying to figure out what I want to do for the finished color piece. And I'm trying to figure this out before I get more detailed with the line art, because this grew out of the fact that I did a previous illustration. Wait, I think this is what I want to use for the base. I did a previous illustration, and I found that what was wrong with it, why it wasn't working, was because my line art was fighting with the colors. So I thought this time, let me work out the color scheme and the lighting beforehand and then go to line art. Try to learn from my mistakes. Salazar is talking about the Jansen brush. He says, is it named after Jansen Ackles? Close, but his is Jensen Ackles. Otherwise, you'd have had it. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's Klaus Janson, but I could be wrong. Oh yeah, and Salazar says if you guys follow Jim Lujan on Instagram, he says I saw Jim's IG video. It looked fun. He shot a little bit of video just while we were kind of hanging around, sketching, showing what everyone was working on, letting people in on it, giving a little bit of Artcasters flavor to your day, even if you're not getting a full episode, you're getting, hey, we're hanging out, we're out in the field. So that was really cool. And it's interesting. I decided to switch back to this brush because I always have a theory that if you're using a tool that you're not familiar with and you want to, or you want to get better at, develop some control with, you do thumbnails with it, because it's okay if the lines are all messed up and things don't quite look right, because it's a thumbnail. It's not supposed to be crisp and clean anyway. And I had just made some lines that really the brush was not doing what I expected. But this is what's nice about using this to do thumbnails is I can just be making marks and trying it out and trying to figure out what this brush does when I move it in certain directions, when I tilt my stylus to a certain angle, and how to get the lines that I want to get. So let's see here. Now I have to decide if I want to cool off the edges a little bit more. So I really just got it going from warm to orange. So do I want to go darker or cooler or both? I think going all the way to blues is definitely too cool. I think that maybe going to a red and then desaturating it. So it's kind of a gray red. So mind you, gray red, still a warm color. But if you put this, let me make sure I'm on the right layer. If you put this next to these this warm value range, it definitely feels cool. Like, see, it becomes almost purple. It's not a purple. You guys saw it. It's a cool red. You saw me pick it from the color picker, but it feels purplish around all this orange. So I'm going to try using that as my cool color. Let's see here. 47 is says, were you thinking about taking this piece to the render level of the previous Gorgon piece? Well, I am. Or in something entirely different. Well, I am, but what I want to do is I'm still trying to decide how much line art I want in my finals. So that previous piece was very much like more of a digital painting. And I want to see what happens with this one if I do more like finished line, almost make it feel more like a comic page. So more line art as opposed to having the thing be mostly tones. And just see how I feel about it. I mean, hell, it might be. I have a bad habit of doing the same thing multiple times just out of curiosity. Part of me wants to do this with line art and then do another version with just without line art and just paint it to see if I'm happy with the results. I mean, it's weird for as long as I've been making art that I'm still futzing around with my style and messing and changing stuff around. But I am. I'm still there's still places where I'm like, let me see what happens if I try to do it like this. And I think I'm gonna put a little bit of shadow or cool color right here to give you a sense that the planes are changing. That, the part of the fabric of the sheet, the bed sheet that's wrapped around them is going up and around them versus the surface that they're laying on is facing the ceiling. So it's not receiving the direct light of the candles. Then I still have to throw those candles in there. And also, you know what? Cooling this off I'm going to come in here and take out some of this light that I put there, just so that it feels like moving away from their heads. It's also a little bit cooler. Like you mentioned, directing the eye where we want with value. By him giving it the sense of it being cooler and darker away from their heads. But that's not the color I wanted. Let's see here. Oh, I see Jay King showed up. Jay King, I gave you a shout out at the top of the show, man. Thank you so much for becoming a new subscriber. Everyone, Jay King joined the Patreon. He's an official Patreon subscriber. I got his name in the scroll at the bottom of the screen. I thanked you at the top of the show, but I want to thank you again now that you're here. I appreciate the love, the support. I look forward to hopefully have you hop in on the art book study groups if you're able to, or watching the repeats, the replays in the archive. There's tons of videos there to check out as well. But thank you. I feel the love and I appreciate it. I see Cassiel's in the chat. Thank you, man. 47S is like color theory, everyone. You got this. It's nice to experiment with a little bit of this color knowledge. And it's just, it's one of those things where it's not that I've never been shown color theory. It's that spending most of my time working in black and white, I don't have a chance to practice it. And if you don't practice things regularly, then they don't become second nature to you and you make weird, stupid decisions. Cassiel says, new people in the chat were the old ones. You know what? I mean, it's a fine mix. People come in and come out. And some people got different plans during the weekend. I like to think it's an open door policy. People come in when they got time. I'm always here. The replays are always here. Oh, and I see Joshua Kimball is in the chat. Said, fun hanging out. Glad to see you rocking the stream this morning. Yeah, it's funny. First time in a while that I've been out and about in the evening, so my voice is a little bit hoarse. But I gave a shout out at the top of the stream for Jacob's apartment, and I will definitely be giving shout outs more when it gets closer to the release date. But I'm looking forward to reading it. It was great to see you. It was great to see the whole gang. Thank you again for the book. Frank's like, Josh, what are you doing here? Well, hell, I'm pretty sure that Josh is how you found me, I think. Let's see here. Salzler says, I've done the line art in digital, printed out on cardstock, and colored it with markers. Interesting. Previous to this, I was doing, with the last volume of Morningstar, I was doing my layouts digitally, printing those out on Bristol board and inking traditional. I have not tried doing color work traditional off of digital inks or digital line art, but it's something I've been thinking about. Maybe printing to instead of printing to Bristol board, if I can find a good watercolor paper that will take. That's the other thing is like I feel like doing it the inks I'm using, even though it's Canon inks, so they're supposed to be archival, but when you start putting water on them, they're going to bleed a little bit. So that's the only thing that I'm concerned about in terms of that. Usually when I do something, if I'm going to do it and I'm going to put water on it, I'll try to make whatever I'm doing, there's just a bare minimum outline as much as possible. So let's see here. I still feel like I need to make a little bit of a change here. Oh, that's what I want to do. I want to put a layer on the Gorgon and just try to differentiate her skin tone a little bit. But before I do that, let me come in here with this this brick red and just darken up some of these serpents. Make it feel more like they're kind of creeping out of the darkness here. So just having some of these extra dark values here to kind of separate out these different levels of serpent that can come in with the more saturated orange. And that way the yellow orange just becomes like a little bit of a highlight. See, it's so weird when I'm doing this. That's like instinctually, I want to draw like this because I try not to get too zoomed in. But I also realize with you guys watching that it's probably hard to see what I'm doing. So it's like I started zooming in a little bit more just to get up a better view. But it's hard to find a balance between what is comfortable for me drawing versus making sure that you guys can see what I'm doing. Like I feel like you guys would want to be even closer than I necessarily want to be. I guess it also depends on what kind of device you're watching on. Let's see here. Cassiel mentioned still doing anatomy studies and struggling a little bit, to be honest. Well, what is it that you're particularly having trouble with? If I can throw out some advice, I'm happy to. That's part of what the whole art book study group thing that we've been doing is on the Patreon is me. I'm constantly studying anatomy myself. I'm taking figure drawing classes regularly. I usually take them on a weekly basis. And I'm always, there's still muscles I don't know the name of. There's bones that I don't necessarily understand how they go together. And I'm always kind of looking at it, reanalyzing. There's stuff that I've learned in the past and forgotten. And that's the real challenging thing is where I'm drawing. And I'm like, I should know this. Why don't I know this? We're just looking at the body in a certain pose and saying, I know what what muscles and bones are involved in this pose. But when I'm putting them together the way I think they go together, it doesn't quite look right. And that's just a matter of like getting a bunch of anatomy books, trying to find reference in the sense of anatomy books that are showing things in the particular pose that I need, and just trying to work it out and get to the bottom of why it is that I'm putting it together in such a way that it doesn't seem to make sense. And sometimes it's not even a matter that, oh, my anatomy's wrong. It's that I'm doing a pose that the body shouldn't be able to do. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. I just need to change the pose to something that's a little bit more realistic. Because as cartoonists, we sometimes have a tendency to break the form and have the figure do impossible things, which that's one of the magical things about comics and animation and making visual narrative art is how much we can just twist and push things. But sometimes in doing that, we end up creating things that just we're like, oh, this doesn't quite make sense. Let's see here. Josh says, I almost think you'd have to print very light blue lines, then ink over it. Well, for this one, I am going to work all digital, but usually when I'm working on comic pages, that's exactly what I do. Is I create it, I actually create like a shortcut to just kind of turn my pages into like it puts a couple of adjustment layers on them. So it's like a set of actions to drop adjustment layers on it that will make it to a light photo blue, like when you're using a non-photo pencil, which still comes out darker and more like kind of almost like a muddy cyan when I print it in CMYK. Like it just doesn't look as vivid as the actual non-photo blue pencils. It doesn't look as vivid as it does on the screen. But I just kind of adjust it so that it won't print particularly dark and it's at a really low opacity. And that's what I would ink on top of. And I see Amaris is in the chat. She says, I just got home. I made $200 at a craft fair. Congratulations. And 47ist says, racing to get my stuff ready for WonderCon. How about y'all? I'm skipping WonderCon this year, but I plan to be back in full effect next year. So I'm looking forward to getting back into there. I don't have any conventions planned for the rest of this year, but I do plan to get back on the convention scene next year. So this year, I'm just trying to get back up to speed in terms of producing more work, getting my writing chops together, getting my next book, at least the first volume written. So I'm working on all of that. So let's see. Amara says, let's see, table fee was $100, so in total $300 was made. The end result was $200. I'm excited. Sold all my sweaters, made sketchbooks, and first fair of the season, and out of inventory. That is fantastic. I am glad to hear it. Nothing like hearing a fellow creative having a sellout show. I see Martin's in the chat. How you doing? What's up? Says, hey, hey, hey. 47ist says, I like having shows to motivate my lazy butt. Yeah, you know what? I mean, that's the thing. I think maybe having a year off from conventions in a certain way, I think it has demotivated me in that now I'm just like, you know what? Again, my perfectionist side never seems to go away, but it's like I'm digging deep in terms of just thinking about making the best book I can. And I felt like time kind of stood still for a little while in the middle of the pandemic, where I was just like, there's just this space where I have to just think and plan and kind of get my mind around what I want to do. And I do feel like I should have been more productive, but that's neither here nor there. In the end, it's just been trying to get, I think giving myself a chance to slow down pace-wise. So let's see here. I want to get a gray that's close to the same value as this orange, but desaturated. You know what I am missing is I am missing a layer on top to check my values. So let me drop a black layer on here and change this to color. So this will allow me to look at all of them and just see what my my values are. Just switching it to black and white, because that's the main thing. Is I want to make sure my values work, and I am noticing that on this warm, the very last one at the bottom, but I probably need some more contrast. I guess I do need to cool off some of the colors here a little bit more, because it feels like there is just not enough contrast in the actual Gorgon in her range. Yeah, I need to cool her off. Well, it's not even that I need to cool her off. I just need to darken the tones that are facing away from the candlelight. And I think I also need to darken those tones on the sword and shield in the background. And Josh says, Jeremy, I think that space to think and prep for a comic is essential, especially after wrapping such a massive project like you did. Yeah, I mean, that was the other thing. Finishing Morningstar, I kind of felt like I honestly told myself I was going to take a year off from narrative comic book work and just make standalone art pieces. But it felt like what I really did was just spend a year, I don't know, sketching. Well, you know what? Actually, several months of it was eaten up, not eaten up, but it was several years went towards finishing that giant dragon painting, which was I showed a lot of the thumbnails and the process on that, but it was a wedding present for my wife that, this is our seventh, we just had our seventh wedding anniversary. That's how patient she is. It took me 7 years to finish the painting that was my wedding gift to her. But I spent a lot of time after finishing Morningstar saying, all right, I don't want to jump into another project. I've been promising to finish this thing for years. And she's been patient because she knew I really wanted to finish Morningstar. So I said, now that Morningstar is done, I am going to put my full energy towards finishing this painting. And that really took a long time. That took a few months. So let's see here. 47 says, I've been letting my next idea marinate for 5 years. Time to get cooking. He said, but yeah, it takes time to develop. Very much so. Like I have, I think like a lot of creatives, I just have a folder that I just call like a Google Doc that I call idea file. And I just toss in ideas as I have them. And if one of those ideas starts going anything longer than, like, say, like usually I'll just have 1 or 2 paragraphs outlining the premise and maybe a little bit about the characters. And I toss it in there and then just move on with whatever I'm working on. But if any of those ideas get to the point where it's taking up more than just I think that this needs to be a little bit darker as well. But if any of those ideas take up more space, like if there's more detail to my outline than that, then I break it out into its own separate Google Doc. And that means it's an idea that is more ready to go. The stuff that's just a couple of sentences, that's the stuff that, like, it's like doing a doodle in your sketchbook. Maybe I'll come back to it, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll turn it into something, maybe I won't. But if I have something that I already have, like a page or two or a couple of pages of notes, of character development, of story, that's something that I look at and like, okay, this thing is probably ready for me to move on. And that kind of comes to the forefront of what I'm going to do next. That's pretty much how I decide what I want to do next. Is sometimes I will have an idea that I've got a bug up my ass about and I really want to do. But for the most part, I just look at my list of ideas and I said, what am I excited about? What is actually the most interesting to me? What am I the most ready to do? What has the most notes to it already? What's the closest to being finished in terms of writing? And that's what I'll do. For a long time, I was saying that I had been promising a sequel to my graphic novel Eye of the Gods, and I keep pecking at it and pecking at it. Problem being is that each of the iterations I've done so far, just none of them were stories that I felt like I had to tell. They were things that I could tell. They're stories that could be interesting, but none of them were something that I'm like, this is a story that I have to tell before I die. And those are the things that I'm trying to reserve. Actually, there's only so many hours in the day, so many hours in a lifetime. So I very much try to restrict the stuff I go forward with to something that I really feel passionate about wanting to do. But I am always capable of talking myself in or out of stuff. And it's very possible that maybe I'm a little too prescriptive with that. And maybe it might be a good idea to just take an idea and, for lack of a better term, take a flyer on it. Just look at it and say, hey, this looks like fun, or this is something different, and just go and do it, not overthink it. So now I'm just trying to find the right balance of contrast. And I think that what I need to do is this red tone needs to also be darker. So let's bring the values. I don't think I need to desaturate it anymore, but let's go down here. Let's try that, see how that feels. Thing I'm trying to figure out is how to get this brush to make broad strokes, because it is capable of making very, very broad strokes, even when I have it at a rather narrow, not narrow, but at a low brush size. And it's got to be because I'm turning the brush to my stylus to a certain direction, or moving at a certain velocity. And I think with a digital brush, it's the same as traditional brushes, where you kind of put it through its paces and learn what kinds of shapes it can give you. And in a way, your brain sort of mentally starts absorbing these things, so that you just think, oh, I want this kind of line. I'm just going to move my hand this way to get that effect that I want. And Cassiel says, are you planning to do a comic book about Greek mythology? Yes, as a matter of fact, I am. And the book is not going to be about a Medusa per se, but I'm thinking, considering how many I've been drawing, that I probably should throw a Gorgon into the mix. For me, I just like drawing Gorgons because I think that visually they look really, really cool. But yeah, there will be some Greek mythology in my next project. The main reason why I'm being tight-lipped about it is just because I want to wait till I really have the story locked down, because I know exactly what my premise is, but I have multiple versions of where the story begins and ends, and I haven't chosen which one is the arc that I really want to go down. And in an ideal world, I could structure the story such that I could jump in and out, forward and backward in time, and I wouldn't necessarily have to have the right story. That I could say, all right, well, I'm going to tell this part of this story here, and I tell this part of this story in this volume, and I can jump back and tell other things that you didn't see before that happened in the past. And I just want to wrap my mind around how to structure that. And again, always telling myself, maybe I'm overthinking it. Just tell the story. 47, this is, by the way, not going to put a Gorgon in the comic. No, there will be a Gorgon in the comic. I just not planning to make it about her. But yeah, it should be in there. Let's see here. William in the chat says, "Pow pow. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for popping by." Sketching out some color comps here. And now let me drop on that color layer. See, that's all I really wanted. I just wanted it to feel like a little bit more contrast between the light and the dark. And now I want to look at it and kind of judge. I think that it's working. I just need to push it back on her arm, and maybe right around where the pillow's at. There's like, I've got a little bit too much now. So, and I mean, at this stage for me, it really comes down to a lot of push-pull and just trying to find the right balance of value. see here. And something else I've been meaning to do with the line work, and we'll see whether this is a mistake or not, is adding a mask layer. And let me put this on maybe a 50% black. And I wanted to knock back the opacity of the lines within the statue because I feel like this statue's anatomy is a little bit too pronounced. And by having the lines inside of the silhouette, having them be lighter would make the statue feel more statuesque. I guess the lower contrast would, for me, hopefully give the illusion, kind of like when you're looking at a statue or if you're looking at an ice cube or something, where you can clearly see the edges, but the details beyond that are very light. Let's see if I push it back a little bit more. Let's take this color that I used and go with something a little bit darker. Actually, let's just go. No, that'll work. Yeah, this is, I think it's looking like the effect that I was going for, which was just, kind of feel a little bit more, almost like an ice cube. I don't want him to seem translucent, but I do want him to feel like an inanimate object. And the question is, do I want the helmet and the shield to feel, the sword and shield to feel the same way or not? That is a good question. And the answer to that is let's try and see how it looks. Maybe it'll work, maybe it'll suck. I don't know. I'm trying to be open to that energy of just saying, like, all right, I don't know the answer. Let me just see what it looks like. Let's see what happens if we knock back the shield too. So this whole thing back here, the idea being, I mean, it's a little bit of playing with the metaphor, because in theory, if he was turned to stone, you'd have to be holding his sword and shield for them to be turned to stone. So I'm breaking sort of the logic of the metaphor. Yeah, maybe it's better to just have it. I mean, it doesn't make sense for the helmet to be off either. Yeah, let me undo this. Yeah, we'll just keep it limited to him. Let's see here. Cassiel asks, did you write all of the story or are you still developing? I am still developing. I've got several pages worth of notes, and I've got basically different versions of the story that I've outlined, and I haven't really nailed down which version is the one that I want to use. And I'm going back and doing some research, reading some Wikipedia entries on different Greek myths and trying to figure out what elements I want to include in my story. So very much still in development, and that's the main reason why I'm playing it close to the vest, because once I start really digging in, like I figure as I'm doing character, when I get to doing character designs, I've been doing some character sketches and sharing those on Patreon. But when I start really digging deeper into the characters, I'll share those on here. You guys will know what it's going to be well in advance of the book coming out per se. So there's some places here underneath the line art that I need to come back in and beef up the tones a little bit. Not beef up the tones, but there's little patchy places underneath where I didn't color it. So let me go back to the tone layer. Whew. Let's see here. 47 is also mentions there's the ambiguity you were going for last week. He took the stuff off to get in bed. Yes, very very true. That's in the alternate version that I have. Martin had pointed out that it doesn't make sense for them to be spooning and for him to be stone, because he would how would he have been able to look her in the face in order for that transformation to make? Which I thought was a very good point. And there is another version of this that I am going to do. I don't want you to think I've bailed on that other version. I'm just going to take this one to completion and then come back and do that version. And I think that's what I like about the whole Medusa thing, is that there's just an ongoing, like, almost like a good comic idea. I just have like an ongoing list of possible images to do on this theme. Let's see here. And while I think that the sword and shield in the cool color, it does work to have the sword and shield be a little bit lighter and stand out. But I think for this, it works better to have it be darker. The helmet, for some reason, still I think makes sense to me for it to stand out. Well, I don't know. Let me undo that. Let's look at the values again. I think I need to draw the candles on top of this before I work the values a little bit more. I think I've got a layer here that I drew them on the image above. We'll just call this my candle layer. Let's see here. And Salazar, Art Nation, says the comments coming fast and furious. See, it says she could have looked at him and then turned around. I suppose that's possible. Martin says, love the helmet and the snakes snaking through. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the fun things about this idea. Like in general, is like with drawing serpents, you can just have them, literally winding their way through, snaking through, and I think it's a good compositional tool. Like it helps pull the eye through the piece. Let's see here. So we put some candles in the foreground. I think I want to make this candle a little bit shorter just so you can see the head of that snake right there. Now let's see. Just trying to decide how much color I want in the candles. So we're getting at just about an hour here. And I am probably going to wrap it up in a few minutes. So if anybody has any questions, or if there were any questions in the chat that I missed, feel free to repost them now. we can talk a little bit before calling it a day for this week. So I do think I need to add a little bit of a glow. Yeah, the glow layer here. Switch to a soft brush. The size not too big, the opacity not too high. Yeah, let me put this glow layer underneath the candles because I feel like I'm losing that hot white center by having it above. I'm painting over it too much. Let's see here. 47 says, as far as the writing goes, I found sometimes the bigger picture can arrive as you're working on it. It says whether it's something happening in the news or your life or just an idea that you needed to mentally claw out. Martin says, also like with the candles, create a new plane, added depth for added depth perception. Yes, that was exactly what I was thinking. Like, I feel like I like the cool moonlit feel, but the helmet was supposed to be kind of the foreground object originally. And I may go through and try to separate the helmet a little bit more and bring it to the front. But yes, the candles definitely bring in those extra planes and make the piece feel less flat. And that was definitely what I was going for. So I'm glad that effect is working. Let me check it again with the values here, the black and white. Yeah, I think I've got two solid versions that definitely work. So you just go with the warm and the cool. Yeah, you know what? That's enough. I don't need to because part of me is still saying, well, what about doing a version where it's all like, do I still have this layer turned on? With the version that's in the bottom left, if I turn off the layers that have where I worked on Medusa skin tones, I actually kind of liked this this thing where it's all kind of like all blue grays. So it's not necessarily the moonlight, but it's almost just kind of like this surreal, I don't know, concept art blue gray that I was playing with. I do want to put one more layer, I think, over the Gorgon to try and, you know, bring her skin tone out a little bit, just to separate her from the sheets. Because I threw a layer on the cool one. There's a layer that I have on top that, like, if I turn this layer off, it's like she's blue, everything else is blue other than the statue. And I threw a little tone on there just to give her and the serpents a little bit of separation from the rest of the environment. And I'm going to do the same thing in the warm one and see if that gives the same effect. And the real challenge is finding a gray that is just finding a gray that doesn't affect the value, but just really it's like I'm just desaturating her, but without losing the highlight that I have on there. 47 is says it's feeling like a scene now, like an epic 90s music video. You can see that a little bit. Martin says the candles don't have to be lit. That is very true. But when I went into doing this second version, I intentionally was thinking that I was going to change the lighting as opposed to being above, to putting them in front of her. Now, that's true. I could put unlit candles. In fact, let's see what happens if I take my candles. Let me lasso these guys. Copy, paste. Move them up. And let me change the hue to a cool. Go on and say, well, that's too purple, but say something around here. It's probably easier, instead of doing a hue saturation, to just come in here and cut off those tips and just pick a dark color that I want these candles to be. Oh, I'm still using the airbrush. Let's try this. Do this for the outer edge of the candle. Then give it a dark core. I'll have to play with it because so far I don't love this, but it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. Yeah, Joshua says, lit candles is rad though. You can likely create a great warm, cool contrast. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the warm candle one is working. I just figured, try this out, see what it says to me, if anything. Yeah, screw it. Let's just go with like a foreground silhouette for the candles. Let's just go full black, and then I can add a little bit of a rim light if it needs it. Well, we'll likely need it, but start with just putting a silhouette in the front. Yeah, value wise, I'm not sure if having candles in the foreground on the cool one. We'll leave it black and white for a second and just play with it purely from values. I think for the one with the for the cool colors, I think what I'm probably going to do instead is play with the helmet more and try to bring the helmet more into the foreground. I don't think that the candles in the foreground for this one, it just doesn't feel like it does as much for the piece as it does for the warm colored one. Yeah, I think for the cool one, I like it without the candles. Ah, yeah. Martin says the warm one is my favorite. Just an idea for the cool concept. Yeah, I mean that's what thumbnails are for. I in fact this is what I enjoy about doing this part with you guys is a lot of times people don't necessarily share the thinking process behind their thumbnails, and this is nice to just chat with you guys as I talk my way through how I'm making the decisions and why. And I'll try stuff out, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, you can see the fact that there's these different variations here on this page, and then even before this, let me go back out to the gallery. There was that whole page I was working on last week where we even got to this thumbnail. Just working on the variations of saying here's the different angles and the piece that I started with that wasn't working. And to be honest, I still want to come back and try this composition, but just rework the values to see if I can get it to a place where it's as good as these other pieces. The other variations that I've got here. And even with this, there was a place where I was looking for sort of some visual reference, and I found a Buddha statue that was lit by candlelight, and I was doing that for reference for the bottom piece. And in doing that, I thought to myself, a Buddha Gorgon. I'm going to have her with her third eye, like her eyes closed, but her third eye open. And so that's a whole nother piece that just came out of doing studies for this. But right now, the cool and the warm, I'm gonna take both of these up to like a finished piece. I think these are two solid variations that both work. So, all right. Okay, gang, we're going to wrap it up here. So, again, thank you everyone for watching, for hanging out, all the great comments and conversation in the chat. 47 says more Gorgons. Yes, there will definitely be more coming. So for those who enjoy this live stream, enjoy this channel, if you'd like to support, you can become a Patreon subscriber at patreon.com/Jeremy. That's patreon.com/GERIMI. There are links in the description for this video, except on Twitch, which doesn't have links in the description, but there are links on the actual the profile page for the channel on Twitch. Anyway, subscribe to Patreon, patreon.com/Jeremy. For as little as $12 a month, you get access to our art book study group. That's our twice monthly live stream where we dig into the best art books around. We sketch, we study, we learn, grow our knowledge together. You can also read my comic books free online. And I post work in progress gifts and more images of what I'm working on throughout the week as well. All that and more at patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. Newsletter.jeremy.net. You can sign up for my free monthly newsletter. You will get a free digital sketchbook. You will also, when I send out the newsletter, you get posts on more of my creative process. I will share some of the work in progress animated gifts. Like I share them on Patreon first, and I'll take a few, share those in the newsletter with some notes on just more of the process, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, the books that I read, the movies I'm watching, what's fueling me creatively, get all of that and more. And I'll also let you know when I have new artwork coming out, when I get back to doing conventions, when I get convention appearances, all of that at newsletter.jeremy.net. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, Eye of the Gods. It is a standalone graphic novel, psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. 144 pages, black and white. I'm the artist, writer, letterer, inker, gray toner, the whole shebang. Same for my most recent project, Morningstar. Morningstar tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains a conclusion, issues 5 through 8. Both issues have extensive back matter, character sketches, page layouts, script excerpts, thumbnails, the whole shebang. Show you how I put the book together. All right, guys. Thank you so much. Again, I always appreciate the company, the comments. It's always fun to hang with you guys. That's it for now. Go be creative.